As a longtime Elder Scrolls fan, a question I get asked pretty often is if I could introduce a new playable race in the next Elder Scrolls game, what would it be? And normally the basic response to this would be something like, oh, introduce the dwarves, or bring back the snow elves. And usually my response is something like, I don't know, maybe the monkeys from Akavir, that'd be pretty cool. But I've been actually giving this some thought recently, and I realized there is one particular race that I would really like to see introduced in some way. And that is the Daedra. Now I know what you're thinking, but Masons like the demons are like the bad guys, how would it even make sense to implement the Daedra? But don't worry, Elder Scrolls nerds, because trying to make this fit with the lore would be the least of our problems. I mean, we're talking about the same company whose solution for the multiple endings in Daggerfall was just to say that all of it was true. But introducing Daedra as a playable race would actually be a lot easier than just, you know, hand-waving away the problems, because all you have to really do is say that after the Oblivion Crisis, there was a whole lot of Daedra who ended up being trapped on Tamriel and unable to go back to Oblivion. Now, does that excuse break some weird lore thing that fans would be greatly upset about? I don't care. And I don't really think Bethesda cares either, because at the end of the day, they're far more interested in making a good and fun game than they are in ensuring every single teeny tiny piece of lore is consistent. However, the real problems with implementing this idea doesn't really come down to the lore, because like I said, you know, who cares or whatever. The real problem comes with how is this concept going to completely break the game itself? There are no doubt many quests, especially for the main quests and side quests, that require you interacting with people and for them to, you know, have a good opinion of you. Which means the alternatives are either A, completely rewrite an alternative option or alternative dialogue, or B, just have some, if not all of the quests, just not acknowledge that you're a Daedra. And if you do that, that kind of defeats the point of being the Daedra itself. I mean, can you imagine if you're playing Oblivion, you go up to the guards, they're like, oh, it's you, the hero of Kavach, and you're like, yes, me. The Daedra himself. It'd be a little weird. Which means if you really want to do this, you kind of have to think about it from the get-go. How do you create a game that's still viable and playable, whether you're the greatest hero or the most reviled villain? A question that the Fable series often likes to ask, especially with Fable 3, and look how that turned out. Everybody loved that game. But this is an issue that extends far beyond just what kind of race you are, because this is a problem that Bethesda really has fundamentally. It's not a problem of the Daedra, it's a problem of role-playing. A long time ago, I did a video talking about how Skyrim is not an RPG, and while a lot of people are greatly pissed off by that, at the end of the day, I still really stick by that sentiment. I mean, sure, you can pretend like you're a blacksmith, or Batman, or a Thalmor renegade, but at the end of the day, the only thing they really acknowledge is the role that you're being forced into. Now, that's not really a failing of Bethesda. I mean, they're telling the story they want to tell in the way they want to tell it, and that really holds true for the entire franchise. I mean, even Arena and Daggerfall didn't really have anything going when it comes to the role-playing aspects. But I think having this as a playable option could really create some interesting dynamic experiences that you wouldn't be able to get from any other race. And I think the best comparison of how that would completely change the gameplay would be something like how the Nosferatu works in Vampire the Masquerade. Whereas normally in that game, with any other vampire race, you can mostly pass off as a human and just do everything you really need to do. But if you're a Nosferatu, it's impossible to go about your daily life without having people freak out and try to murder you. And I think that would create an interesting element in the Elder Scrolls, because as the Daedra, nobody really likes you. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some people who are like weird cultist people, but for the most part, everybody kind of sees you as the bad guy. And even when you're truly trying to do good, it makes your whole job a lot more difficult. And certainly that would make the game itself a lot more difficult, but I think that's also what makes it more interesting. If you're playing as a Daedra, you don't want the game just to be the same as it is for if you're an Imperial or a High Elf. You want to feel like you're kind of an outcast. And Oblivion, and maybe Skyrim, I don't really know, already does have a system that can be utilized to manage this if it was more important. And that is the fame and infamy, which can be leveraged to make the Daedra start out as a more hated person, by getting like 500 infamy or something. And that would also mean that any character with any potential race or class could also become just as hated as a Daedra. But of course, in order to do this, you also need to implement unique behaviors for a loved person, a hated person, unique dialogue for both of those, and to take advantage of the Daedra themselves, unique dialogue and behaviors for that specific race. Which, of course, is all going to take away from the resources and time of people working on the game itself. Which means that unless the game is specifically designed in some Fable 3 aspect of trying to either make you a good guy or a bad guy, this implementation implementation could ultimately probably make the game worse. Which is why, even though I think it'd be really cool and potentially a really fun idea, I'm not really expecting it, nor would I necessarily want this. And that's also why I don't really make videos talking about what I want to see in Elder Scrolls 6, because at the end of the day, what I think doesn't really matter, and nothing I say is necessarily going to be helpful for the game developers themselves. Which is why I say just sit back and enjoy whatever Elder Scrolls 6 comes to be, because it'll probably still be pretty good. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.